The advent of the internet revolutionized the world as we once knew it. It allowed for global communication, information and disinformation could be distributed quicker than ever before, and it also led to a lot of porn. Gone were the days of your older cousin telling you about the porn magazines that they found under a log in the woods. The technology has changed, but the moral panic hasn't. My name is June Sternbach.
My name is Josh Borman.
This is Ill Conceived, a podcast about natalism. This is our first main feed episode that wasn't a mailbag since, I think, December with our eugenics episode.
I think it's been a full month at this point.
I'm a little nervous, I have to be honest here. I'm a little scared. It's been a while since we've done a whole legitimate shebang of an episode. I'm a little nervous, but very excited at the same time.
I don't think there's any reason for worry. I think, sometimes it just happens that you come down with the plague and then your co-host also comes down with a slightly less severe case of the same said plague.
Yeah, no, it just overlaps. Nothing works out. And then it's also the holidays. It was a brutal thing. And during that whole time, while I was just putting together the episode, I was just like, I cannot wait when we're both not ill so we can talk about pornography together.
That's right.
I could not wait to talk to you about pornography and the moral panic behind it. So this is going to be a good one. This is going to be a fun one, I think. I
actually just got back from marching in the street. Obviously, what with the recent events of our very, very cool federal law enforcement, a lot of bad shit's going on. And odds are good, if you're listening to this show, that you're the kind of person who is feeling a lot about what's been going on and you want to see things change. And what I will say is that doing something as simple as going out into the streets and yelling for an hour or two with a bunch of other people who are doing the same thing is, I don't know. I've been feeling really bad all week, mentally.
Yeah, I think you and I both, just about the state of the world politics just in the new year so far. Yeah,
my mental, I wouldn't say it's at an all-time low, but it's close. And there was just something about being surrounded by so many other people, even though it wasn't even a very big protest. It was like a few hundred people, which in New York is not very big.
Right.
But there was even a marching band, which I had never been at a protest with it was 8 people, but still it was like, oh my God, every protest needs a marching band. What are we doing?
It goes so hard. Marching bands, I feel like people make fun of marching bands, especially with the drum line, but they kind of go hard. They elevate the mood very immediately. It's absurd how much energy it provides, frankly. There's nothing that feels better than actually getting out. Because I feel like it's so easy to fall in the habit of just doom scrolling. I like that. I mean, that's not a new concern or whatever, but it's so easy to just fall into that habit and not do anything about it. But it's so cathartic. It feels so good to be wait, I am not the only person, even in my neighborhood, that feels this way. There are people outside everywhere that feel the same way I do and want to see change in that way. And it feels cathartic. It feels good in a way that's different from seeing a lot of people agree with you online. It's so much, you could just see 100 people agree with you in person, immediately feels 10 times better than seeing a post that's 100,000 likes or something on Twitter.
Yeah. I mean, that's the nature of online, right? It's people who follow you online are already naturally going to be predisposed to agree with you. So
right.
If you make a post and a whole bunch of people are yes, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's very different when you are marching down the street singing "All You Fascists Are Going to Lose" and you are marching so close to the bass drum that you can feel it in your chest. That is a uniquely empowering feeling.
Yeah.
And June, maybe you should be the change you want to see in the world, and you could be in the Chicago anti-fascist marching band, maybe.
Yeah. Oh my God. I've been trying to find an excuse to break out my drum set and all of my music shit. Not that a drum set's a drum line or a marching band.
Well, you got to get other people, and you got to give each of them a drum.
We'll get some harnesses. We'll attach that shit to the harness. Yeah. I'll work it out. But no, that's we'll see. Maybe we'll see what happens.
Anyway, we might as well open up the world famous mailbag, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What do we have today?
Well, we've got a letter here from Frill Squid, which is
I love that
titled
name.
Science and Very Early Eugenics. And it says, "Dear Boss Josh and Captain June," which I think means I win. Although I feel like if you're captain, you outrank me. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, what's boss in like a military hierarchy?
I mean, I don't think
boss is not a. That's not a military thing.
No, it's a different kind
just
of
a made
leader.
Up term.
It's a different kind of leader. I'm a boss. I'm like a union boss or something like
maybe
that.
Maybe like
perhaps.
A mafioso. You're
or
like
a cake
mafia
boss, maybe.
A cake boss.
I might be a cake boss. I listened to the eugenics episode, and you kind of breezed past the 19th and very early 20th century. Understanding the rise of eugenics requires knowing the full ableism of the 19th century, including insane asylums and sanitariums. It's also important to note the range of eugenics laws, especially the Virginia Sterilization Law of 1924. These legal mandates for the sterilization of disabled people are often forgotten in the whitewashing of American history. The Nazis were inspired by American policies first. The Battle Creek Sanitarium, where Kellogg's originated, also played a role in the eugenics movement, along with introducing a variety of bland breakfast cereals. IQ was originally a ratio, mental age divided by chronological age, multiplied by 100. It can be seen as a developmental scale, not a comparative one. This folds in tidily with infantilizing narratives used to disenfranchise disabled people, both in the historical sterilization laws and today. When I was studying genetics in undergrad, we had multiple lectures in multiple classes on why eugenics and natalism aren't just immoral, they don't even mathematically work. Anyway, unsweetened cornflakes are evil. Best, frill squid.
No, that's actually really interesting that we got emailed about Kellogg's, because they're actually going to come up in this episode today.
Oh, really?
It's impossible to talk about moral panic of pornography and not mention Kellogg's. We, I think, brought up a little bit of the early history, especially how, the Nazis were inspired by the US. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's a topic we are still going to cover a little bit.
Oh,
especially
definitely.
with what America inspired in Nazi Germany and linking those two together. I think that's going to be its own entire episode. So we will.
I think so. What I wanted to cover in that specific episode was more to do with IQ, in the way that concept, the concept of intelligence quotient, was weaponized particularly after World War II, which is why I started basically at the beginning of the 20th century. But you're exactly right that there is more to cover here, and we very much intend to do so. I will say, too, Battle Creek, Michigan, I grew up pretty close to Battle Creek. I actually went to the Kellogg's, weird little museum thing that they have in Battle Creek one time when I was a kid.
I didn't even know they had a museum.
Yeah. Well, it's
just about the history of the founder and just like some of his weird shit.
Yeah, it's the company museum, right? It's kind of like, have you ever been to Hershey's Chocolate World in Hershey, Pennsylvania?
I have been there. Yeah,
it's that kind of thing.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Kellogg's sort of maybe one of the top 5 historic most evil companies in United States history.
And it's interesting too, evil Michigan industrialists, right? Between Kellogg and Ford.
Yeah, what is with that?
I could do a whole episode about the great state of Michigan if I felt like it. It's a place that is prone to fascism. Let's put it that way. Anyway, yeah, thank you so much for the letter. And we will absolutely cover some of these topics in a future episode. So
yeah, definitely thank you for bringing that up too, because that is a very important part of this history.
Yes, and also in general for anybody, if there's something where it's like, hey, I would love to see you cover this thing, please let us know, because there are other things like this as well where we very much intend to cover them. We just haven't been able to do so yet because obviously we only can do so much in a single episode.
And we will always do our best.
Not me.
No, you're always doing your worst. You're sabotaging
That's
me.
right.
You're actively as I'm talking. You're doing you're like flashing shit in my eyes, trying to blind me.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
You're an enemy.
I've got a flashlight.
You're an enemy of mine. Laser pointer through the camera.
Destroying the lens of my own camera just to own you. Yeah.
I'll just be a crying lib.
Lib tears.
Liberal tears. Got your ass. So I think with that, let's get into what we're talking about today, which is pornography and censorship. Josh,
yes.
Do you know what porn is? Are you familiar with pornography? Do you know about that?
I know what it legally is.
Okay. What is it legally?
Basically, there's 3 prongs to the Miller test. Just reading this straight from Miller v. California. Does the average person applying contemporary community standards, would that person find that the work appeals to the prurient interest, which is to say horny. Whether the work depicts or describes in a patently offensive way, sexual conduct or excretory functions, which pertains to state law, and then whether the work taken as a whole lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. And generally speaking, you have to pass all three of those prongs to be considered fully obscene.
Oh, is that why historically porn had like narratives in like some of the oldest ones?
That probably
like
has something to do with it. I mean, the Miller test didn't come into existence until the Miller v. California case, which was 1973.
Okay.
But
basically, today we're going to be talking about just how Congress, the United States, and not even just the United States, but sort of the world as a whole is sort of starting to censor the internet, especially early on in these efforts, in the name of like protecting the children in like morality policing over porn, and sort of like what downstream effects that might have. We're not going to be rating porn today. I do not have any links to porn.
We're not going to be rating it
for this episode. We're not going to be rating it.
I want to rate it. I want to see which ones are good and which ones are not worth my time.
That's a totally different. That'll be a mailbag. Maybe we can go from there for the mailbag. So the thing that the reason I've been thinking about this topic a little bit more recently is I'm sure you've seen this new bill, a new law that's being passed around Congress right now. It's a bipartisan effort in the Senate called KOSA. Which is a law that would sort of age gate a lot of the internet, and to use social media, and not even just social media, just an array of different websites that might have any sort of posting or interaction, or even some like app stores.
Right.
You will have to submit a photo ID, state ID, or country ID proving that you're 18 years old. And it would ultimately, as well, prevent people from under the age of 16 from using social media.
I mean, I'm kind of on board with that part, if I'm being perfectly honest.
And I'll be so real, too, just right up front. Like, that doesn't sound so bad, especially with the state of the internet that we see right now, where, like, best example being with Grok on Twitter, you can just sort of prompt it to have it undress anyone, and people have been using it to undress children and basically essentially create child sexual abuse material, or CSAM, as a lot of people probably see it abbreviated. So like the internet genuinely has deteriorated in the sense, not even just in like the realm of pornography, but just like the way that we see disinformation spread, just the way that we see actual empathy decline, the way that people treat each other, just all of this. It like on the surface, it's like, okay, maybe it's not the worst thing to not allow kids and teens on the internet, but it does have like a worrying trend that like it's like a sort of a slippery slope situation where it can be used for much more worrying things than just that.
And this is kind of the question, right? And the devil is in the details when it comes down to the implementation of this stuff. And I know we're about to talk about that, but the idea, for instance, of there should be a way to prevent minors from accessing adult content online is, I think, in broad strokes, I'm okay with that. Like, I think that makes sense. Similarly, I think that with what social media has become, and like the big social networks, if we're talking about Instagram, Facebook, X.com, the everything app, whatever, I don't think anybody under 16 should be on there. And there is a lot of very, very well documented research that demonstrates just how bad being on those sites is for young minds. Not because there's something inherently wrong with being online, but because these networks are designed in such a way to make kids feel bad about themselves. But again, this isn't really a problem with kids having access to the thing per se. It's a problem with the design of the technology.
The people running these websites are designing them in a way, because I think at the end of the day, it's almost entirely for profit motives. They design these websites to keep
people them to be addictive.
On, exactly. They want the more time people spend on these websites, the more money that they'll get through either ads, through maybe like Facebook Marketplace advertising, like Instagram stores. Like, there is so much,
or just regular old ads,
just exactly ads. Anything, it could be anything, and that's by design. That's why anything they can do to keep people on them longer. If, like, again, for example, on Twitter, being pissed the fuck off keeps you on a social media app too. It's just it's by design in a lot of cases. It seems like the easy way right now for a lot of lawmakers is to just straight up ban people from using these services, but that doesn't fix the root of the issue. That just sort of puts a band-aid on it, and it's one of those like really fucking shitty band-aids, you know. It's like the $2 band-aids where you get like 30 band-aids and they fall off within 10 minutes. That's like what this is.
I thought you were saying when you said $2 band-aids, I was like, $2 a lot. $2 is quite a bit for a
like
band-aid,
30 for like 30 shitty band-aids, you know, just like 30 awful band-aids.
I would expect a really good band-aid actually if I bought one and it was $2. I would expect it to be the best fucking band-aid.
I buy my band-aids on Etsy.
Handcrafted band-aid.
Yeah. No, it's like, you know, it's the shitty band-aids, because that's really what that would be. Is it's not fixing the real issue here. It's just putting it off.
I demand that lawmakers only use cruelty-free, artisanal, locally sourced band-aids to solve the problem.
That'll be the new paper straw movement. We can start this. We'll do it. But and I think this is like most easily represented by I came across a conversation between Tucker Carlson and now ex-gay conservative Milo Yiannopoulos. I'm sure you're familiar.
Now?
He is ex-gay now.
Oh my God. The grift never stops with this fucking guy.
I know, it's profitable. It's very profitable in right-wing spaces, of course, to be detrans, but also to be ex-gay and sort of make that your thing.
Have you ever been addicted to anything?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Big time.
So, you know, there's that moment when your mind is flooded and it's all you can think about.
Yes.
And it's all that you can, you got to get it out, because if you don't do a line or have a smoke or do something, if you don't get it out, it's just going to be all that you can think about for the rest of the day. It's just driving you crazy because it floods your mind.
Yeah.
I've been addicted to one or two little things, you know, and I realized my sex worked the same way.
Yeah, I believe that.
I realized that when I was on a plane, I'm sitting down, you know, hey, team 1A, I'm sitting on the plane. I'm like, yeah, I'll have a gin and tonic, girl. And then, you know, like a basketball player, well, not a basketball player, they're all gay nerds, but, you know, like a football player would sit next to me. Like it would take hold of me. There were times I had to like go to the bathroom and like, you know.
Yeah.
Because I had to get rid of it because it was taking hold of my mind.
It sounds like a demon.
Yeah, because it's what it is. I joke, I say Gorgoroth, the semen demon. You know, he comes out the way. He doesn't visit me very often anymore.
As you can see, conservatives are talking about like being gay or like having a sexuality as a like a demonic thing. There's like this
having
panic
a
around
sex
it.
drive.
Yeah, it's demonic apparently now. And you know, this feels like
that's not new.
Not new at all. And I think it's really notable that of course Tucker Carlson is sort of laundering this. Like of course he would do something like this, but now apparently ex-gay guy sort of going on these platforms to talk about it this way. It's like this is like a new form of a panic, of a morality panic that we've been witnessing in the United States in particular for half a century now at this point, even longer than a century at this point. I think it would be interesting to like just take it back a little bit. Let's talk about the start, about the morality panic, about just the concept of having a sexuality and like acting on that in some way. So of what I could find after doing some research and digging, the earliest examples I could find of like a sexuality moral panic coming from like a conservative worldview that I could find is it starts and originates in like the mid 1700s from a book called the Medicinal Dictionary. And this book states that masturbation, and this is a quote, direct quote from the book, deplorable and generally incurable disorder. So this is sort of how some people at the time thought about people who would masturbate, because of course, and we know this, we've been doing this show for a minute, a lot of conservatives, especially religious conservatives, they've had this worldview that it's like you should not have sex, you should not do anything with sexuality unless it's for procreation, right? Yeah.
In breaking down along theological lines of like whether it's even appropriate in like a marriage to have sex if you're not doing it for the sake of having kids. Like there were a lot of people who even said you shouldn't be having sex for the sake of pleasure if you're not doing it to have kids, even if you're fucking married.
Right. It's an immoral act to do that, which is just a very absurd belief if you are not hyper conservative religious. So like on top of that, people in this time period thought that diet and oddly in particular spicy foods and other things like alcohol had a huge influence in behavior, like leading to people to masturbate. So people began putting together like theories about what you should eat to avoid like immoral degeneracy. So dull diets were created that would counteract this degeneracy of masturbation.
It might sound silly to be like, well, how could, spicy, whatever, but because so much of, I think, this form of Christianity is about denying your body any sort of pleasure, it makes sense, right? Because there's something about spicy food that challenges the body in a meaningful way. There's some pleasure there, but there's also some pain there, right?
Absolutely.
You have a complicated reaction to it.
And it's fun. It's great.
And it's fun. But again, if you are trying to live a lifestyle that relies on you depriving your physical body of unknown or challenging or scary or pleasurable sensations, this lines up perfectly.
Absolutely. And that's sort of a big part of this is it's like having these intense or heightened sensations was deemed immoral. But of course, there is no scientific backing that's like if you eat a spicy curry, you're going to want to like fuck. That's not like a scientific thing. This was like a pretty crazy belief. Maybe it'll become mainstream again in like a year or two. Anything could happen.
I do think it's also important just to acknowledge briefly here that this is also just racism.
It is.
That like so much of this is just fear of the libidinal other, which is so common in the way that people from not Northern European countries are portrayed and exoticized.
100%. And, like, it's ridiculous. This is like a very racist, it's a very obviously fake thing. But at the time, this book, A Medicinal Dictionary, was very influential for a lot of people at this time. In particular, one of the most notable people that probably made the biggest name for himself through this ideology was a Seventh-day Adventist minister named Sylvester Graham. And he was, like I said, the biggest proponent of this ideology. And I don't know, the name Graham sounds familiar. He invented the graham cracker, which is a very dull food. And, I've eaten a graham cracker. You've eaten a graham cracker.
They're really good when you get the ones with the cinnamon sugar on them. I'll
so
say
good.
that.
The honey ones too. Love the honey ones. Those are both peak. So there have been fairly influential historical figures that have been heavily informed by this ideology. Josh, tell me what you know about the Seventh-day Adventists. I feel like we've talked about them a little bit on the show, but I feel like I want to go a little bit more into them, just like very briefly, because I think they're so fascinating.
My understanding of Seventh-day Adventists is that they're sort of a weird splinter group that's sort of off of Christianity that has some of its own weird traditions, not dissimilar from like Mormonism and the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Right. But I think one of the most notable like beliefs, because you're right, they do have like it's an offshoot. They have different practices, different beliefs. But I think the most notable and most informative about the type of person that would be in this sect, like Sylvester Graham himself, is that they believe that Jesus Christ is returning like tomorrow and that the rapture is about to happen. And not only is that about to happen, they want it to happen.
Yeah, they're trying to immanentize the eschaton. Yeah,
exactly. They are, and they want it to happen. They're looking forward to it. And they base a lot of the way they live around that. Because they think that when the rapture starts, you will be judged and you will be either admitted to heaven or to hell, like that the day it happens based on how you lived your life. So it's sort of like the reason that they are so morally, like they're moral purists in this sense, is because that's how they think the end of the world will judge. They will be judged at the end of the world. And I think that's a very important thing here. Yeah.
If the time of judgment, eternal judgment, is nigh, then everything you're doing is essentially an audition for that judgment.
Every single day, you're being watched by God. He is watching you all the time, judging you, and he will judge you very soon. And Graham himself spearheaded the aphrodisiac movement. I don't know if you've heard of specifically that before. It was a movement in the 1700s, I think early 1800s as well, where, and I feel like everyone's heard this before, but a lot of people in the aphrodisiac movement believed that masturbating caused insanity, blindness, all sorts of like different physical ailments, and that masturbation was a moral decay. So, and of course, bringing this back to the diet is why he invented the graham cracker.
So it's a bit of a misnomer. Like they are anti-aphrodisiac. They think that sexual drive is happening because you're eating all of these things that have aphrodisiac effects. Therefore, they must be cut out of your diet.
Absolutely. You need to live as bland as possible. And it was a very influential part of the Protestant religious movement in this era. It had a surprising amount of sway. Sylvester Graham was sort of like the biggest person around this time in this movement. And then another person that we mentioned earlier, thanks to the person in the mailbag, was John Kellogg of Kellogg's Food fame, who I didn't read these books. I've not read these books in full. But he authored a lot of books, a lot of health science books, science, air quotes. One of them being one of his books called Plain Facts for the Old and Young, where he states that masturbation is one of the vilest, the basest, and most degrading acts that a human can commit.
Huh. That's interesting. I mean, I disagree with this.
I
think
yeah.
If I think about the vilest, basest, and most degrading acts that people can commit, I can think of a lot of them.
Murder, rape,
bestiality.
Yeah, that's a bad one. Like, I don't know, stealing from people is probably worse than that.
Mugging somebody,
like punching
unless
someone,
they really
maybe.
deserve it. Obviously, that goes for stabbing, punching, mugging, etc. If they really deserve it, then yeah.
But there's a lot of different things that I think are probably above masturbation. This was a very important part to the moral panic at this time for religious people in this era.
I should also say Kellogg went on to be a very notable eugenicist, as of course the letter writer also pointed out up top. So
the Battle
funny
Creek,
how all these things connect, isn't it?
All intertwined historically and today, and they all find the roots back to the same people.
It's almost like this is an organized ideological movement with specific ideological priors that can be tracked and traced throughout history.
That's fucking crazy, dude.
Huh.
But no, I'm not going to get too much into like his history of like the eugenics. I think we'll dedicate more of another episode.
Definitely.
More with that another time.
We're going to add Kellogg to like our big wall of villains. He's going to go up alongside James Dobson. Dobson, interestingly, I will say, not a steadfast opponent of masturbation. In fact, no, he thought it was that like, as long as you weren't looking at porno or whatever, it was pretty much normal and fine.
Oh, that's definitely what he did. He would masturbate, but he was like, I'm not a degenerate. I'm not watching porn about it.
I wonder though where he would stand on like romance novels, you know? Like is reading Wattpad fic while you're jerking it acceptable, you know?
I wish we could have asked, I'm glad
how
he's
does
dead.
AO3 fall into the conversation? That's what I'm wondering.
I think if Kellogg was around today, he would definitely have opinions about AO3, about it being degenerate. Because like he's the type of crazy that invented granola, like the food granola, because he believed it cut down on libido and curbs masturbation.
I mean, granola is delicious, but again,
so
it's got to be well seasoned to be delicious. You got to get that shit with the caramel on it or the sugar or what have you.
Blueberries, high fiber, very important. Eat fiber, people. That's the most important part about granola, frankly.
But the unseasoned cereal, revolting, abominable.
And that's what these people liked, because that's the most pure. That will make you masturbate the least.
Did I ever tell you about the time that after my sister's funeral, they brought in these fucking sandwiches that were the most disgusting thing I have ever eaten? Like, the bread was dry. The meat was like fully, I think it was pretty much entirely unseasoned.
It was from a can.
No, meat from a can would have been better.
It's good.
I totally fucking taken Spam over that shit.
Spam is so good.
No, we're talking like unseasoned ham. Again, on dry rolls, and some of the mildest cheese you have ever tasted. And I was like, I feel so Protestant right now. It's like, because it's like, I could be having feelings about this. If I was Irish, I would be drinking wine. Yeah. I would be, doing all that shit. But no, here I am sitting my Dutch Protestant ass down, drinking tap water and eating the worst sandwich I have ever eaten.
American religion culture is all about torturing the self at every step of the way, even when you're having a bad time and feeling bad already. Oh, God. So So I think, I wanted to give a little of this history just to show that there's been a long running history of a lot of really insane moral panic beliefs about like masturbation and porn, because people in this time, like over 200 years ago, invented dull diets and dull foods and like graham crackers because they thought it would like cut down on masturbation. And this was like, this was before pornography was in our pockets on like screens in magazines, and before like people like gay people became not as taboo and socially acceptable. So this was like even before, where today a lot of people on the right have a lot, there's a lot of parallels of people talking about the moral degeneracy of our time. People have been saying that there has been moral degeneracy for centuries at this point. And I think that's just really important to note.
Back then they had prisons, but these days we have prisons and we call them our dang phones. Am I right?
Prison of the mind. You're right. I would high five you. I would give you a nice little high five right now. Got him. Yeah, and sort of the evolution of this and like the screens, the prison of the phone, the screen, and sort of this like moral panic of masturbation. I feel like this is sort of a topical subject right now. I feel like if you've been online in like last couple of years, you've probably seen the conversation of porn addiction.
Yeah. Something
I'll see fairly often is people in progressive or like left-leaning spaces will see a comment from someone like, let's say Grums, or someone online, super online, right-wing figure.
If you don't know who Grums is, congratulations, by the way. I'm just going to say that.
Very happy for you. We're definitely not going to cover him any deeper than this on the show ever again. But just like example being of just like a traditional misogynist saying very misogynistic stuff. They'll post photos online of women with large breasts, like art, and being like, this is the ideal woman. They'll like say stuff like that.
Or like the video game thing of being like, this is what a woman looks like in a video game that was made for woke. And this is what a woman looks like in a video game made for real gamers. And she has fucking tits the sizes of melons and like her back is bending at an angle that is not possible for any human being to bend at. And
yeah, just like that type of person. And it's like people will always be like, oh, this is what porn addiction looks like. And it's like, I mean, maybe, but I feel like it ignores the root cause of this is just like misogyny. Yeah, I think it's sort of like I feel like it's sort of ignoring the root cause of a lot of why people panic about porn. I think when you just say it's a porn addiction, because I think people can be addicted to porn. I think there have been like actual real examples of people addicted to porn, but it's also a hard conversation because it's not quite an addiction in the same way that like alcohol is.
Exactly. What it is you have a compulsive behavior and you are channeling that compulsion into something. But there's a reason that porn addiction does not exist in the DSM, right? It's not a real diagnosis in the way that alcoholism is or something like that, where it physically changes the composition of your brain.
Especially because like in the way that people talk about porn addiction, they're like, oh, it makes their worldviews worse or more like just more misogynistic. It makes them think different ways about things, and it's like that's not really what like alcoholism or like like gambling addiction. The addiction doesn't make people's opinions worse. It doesn't. Part of the addiction isn't about the opinions people have because of the thing that they're compulsively addicted to. Does that make sense? You can have compulsions that make you do some different thing. It could be anything, working out too much, like anything. There could be compulsions in that way that manifest in different ways. But basically, all of this to say is that when you talk about porn addiction and you don't talk about it in like the frame of patriarchy and like conservative religious worldviews, you're sort of it's sort of helping them in a way. It sort of legitimizes their worldview, I think, when you can be like, oh, see, now this is actual degeneracy. This is the type of wokely, this is degeneracy. And it's like, well, I mean, I don't think so. I don't think it's degeneracy. I think it's misogyny, actually.
You're right. Because I think that the point is very well made that it's not something that necessarily changes your behavior. That's the big difference. If you are addicted to gambling, if you are addicted to drugs, if you are addicted to alcohol, you will do anything to get that fix, up to and including hurting people. Because chemically, the need to get that thing is so strong that it overpowers everything else. But that's not that's not how sex works, which again is why it isn't in the DSM, which isn't to say that it can't change you. Right.
I think it absolutely can.
It's absolutely true to say that. And it's dependent on the kind of thing you are consuming.
100%.
There is a big difference between different types of pornography, how you consume, what is going on there and how you consume it and the extent to which you use it as a replacement for actual honest to goodness interaction with other people. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, watching like violent porn is not the same as like looking at furry art. I don't believe there's totally different perceptions of like, and not safe for work art compared to there's so many different levels to this. Yeah.
And even violent stuff. It's like, people have kinks, people have fetishes, and I think it's very important to allow people to explore the entire world of their sexual desire, as long as it is something, of course, that is being done in a way where everybody is an adult who consents to it.
It's all about consent. Absolutely. Talking about porn addiction in this way, I think is also important because I'm sure you've seen this also where people talk about like sex scenes in movies and television and they're like, oh, I'm so sick of horrible sex scenes in movies. Like this is useless. It doesn't.
I mean, I agree, frankly.
Do you really?
I think there need to be more good sex scenes in movies. Yes. I think that's the reason that the fucking gay hockey show has been so successful, right? Is that people love those sex scenes. They're really well directed.
I haven't watched it, but I'll take your word for it. I don't know if you've watched it.
I haven't watched it either. I'm just going from what I have heard from people who I trust. I'll have to get. I'll watch a little bit of it. I'll report back next time we record.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll check it out too. But I guess I just say all of this as a concern to not give too much credence to like very historic right wing propaganda campaigns that we've seen manifest in the like anti-masturbation and now as we'll see just like going into like the porn industry and like LGBTQ issues.
I feel like in the past we've talked about this actually, about how like media portrayals of sexuality, and I don't mean in porn specifically, I just mean more broadly, literature, movies, stuff like that, how they're actually really important. Mm-hmm. I think for one thing, they are a mirror to whatever people see as sexy at the time.
Right.
My favorite genre is the so-called erotic thriller from the early 90s, because none of that shit is even remotely sexy at all.
Yeah.
But back then, it just fucking got people going. And it's such a weird little window into like what people thought was like the hottest thing imaginable circa 1991. And you go back and look at it now, it's like, really? This? What are we doing here? And then but like if you go back and you look at sex scenes from like old movies before the Hays Code, a lot of that shit's really hot.
Yeah. No, that is interesting actually. And I think like some of it, I haven't seen pre-Hays Code stuff, but I think it's interesting, especially with like the increased accessibility of it all and like the way that we have like feeds and algorithms now. It's like there's anything for anyone out there, like Rule 34. Like there is anything out there for people at this point. And I think that also does change, I think, what is sexy these days with how much access people might have.
I mean, Zootopia hadn't been made back then,
That's a very formative film for a lot of people. I've never watched it, but I know it's very formative. Zootopia.
I've watched it and I've read the famous abortion comic. You've read the abortion comic, right?
I don't
the
think
Zootopia
so.
Abortion comic?
Is this a real comic for Zootopia?
Wait, you don't know about the Zootopia?
I know next to nothing about Zootopia.
We are derailing this entire episode so that I can show you the Zootopia abortion comic.
Okay, please, yeah.
So it's called
I Will Survive?
I Will Survive, yeah. And I'll cut the time of you reading this.
Okay.
But once you're done, I want us to just talk about this very briefly because this is also a natalist comic.
Yeah. No way. Yes. Do you want me to read this whole thing?
Yes.
5 minutes later.
If you had kept me in the dark about your premeditated sin. No way, dude. So this is like a Christian conservative drawing this comic.
Presumably?
I assume so. I feel like the big tell here is that this is a premeditated sin to not have a child at 1 month pregnancy. This is like the type of thing. This is the type of thing that like a Christian like that I knew in high school would say about abortion. Like this is a very like high school.
It feels high school, doesn't it? Yeah.
A very young person, religious person, but still very dedicated to the religion view of like this issue.
I just had an idea.
Yeah.
Listeners, if you would like us to do a Patreon episode where we do a reading of the Zootopia abortion comic, let us know. Because that's something that I am willing to do.
I'm also very willing to do that. That would be so funny. Oh my God. Yeah, please let us know. We'll do it. That would be really fucking funny. But no, this is an insane comic.
Congratulations. Like my life, I think of my life sort of in two epochs, right? Before and after I saw the Zootopia abortion comic. Yeah. And now I have transferred that cursed knowledge to you. So you're welcome.
This is really huge. This is important. I'm so glad that you shared this with me. I cannot believe I've never seen this before. And I think the message being that if you choose to have an abortion and betray the man in the relationship, that you will be alone, lonely, and useless in society. That will be your punishment. Right. Yeah. Holy shit.
That's almost as horrible of a fate as being addicted to pornography.
Yeah. It's about this.
They're close.
Masturbating. That's probably like exactly what, like if Kellogg's knew about this comic, I would love to see his reaction to this.
Now, I know that as regards like porn on the web, there are a lot of honest to goodness bad actors here, right?
Absolutely.
I'm not talking about the porn performers. I'm talking about like MindGeek, right? The company that owns like most of the big online adult sites.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's sort of the thing. That's what's sort of hard to talk about because like of course a lot of the moral panic behind just like watching porn is I think kind of silly and of course like a very right-wing project. Part of the problem I think why they've made a lot of progress with like Project 2025 and just like taking on a lot of this and trying to censor a lot of the internet is because it's not a lot of people have actually talked about like, the actual, like you said, bad actors in these industries that have harmed a lot of fucking people. Pornhub in particular, owned by MindGeek, have a actual like really documented history of allowing CSAM and rape videos to be posted and shared and downloaded on their websites. And it took a large effort, largely from the victims of like in these videos, to take on the websites to get the videos offline. So for a long time, it was basically like if you found your own video and you, like it was up to you, it was up to the person to try to get these offline, and it was really hard for a long time. A lot of these websites would not actually do it for a lot of for a long time.
Because at that point too, in terms of the law, there are now laws about like revenge porn and stuff like that. But at that point, it was still kind of the Wild West because the law had not yet caught up to the state of the internet, which has been the story of the internet as long as the internet has been around. I do also just want to note here that, Pornhub is one of many websites owned by the company that is actually, it's no longer called MindGeek. Now it's called AYLO, AYLO. It's owned by a private equity firm, a Canadian private equity firm called Ethical Capital Partners, which I think is really funny.
Okay.
But their big brands include Brazzers, Pornhub, RedTube, YouPorn, TubeAte, XTube, Digital Playground, Men.com, Mofos, Nutaku, Reality Kings, Sean Cody, Trans Angels, Twisties, and WhyNotBuy.com. So
like a lot of them, a lot of
the real like big heavy hitters. Yeah.
Yeah. There is an article written by Rose Kalemba called Re-Victimized When Sexual Assault Gets Uploaded to Porn Platforms. So she decided to write this article because when she was 14, she was sexually assaulted by someone who then went on to upload that footage. He recorded it and he uploaded it onto Pornhub. And as it stood at the time, she could not just request to get that footage off of Pornhub. She had to pretend to be a lawyer acting for her, and that was the only thing that got this video off of Pornhub. A really good piece that I will be linked in the show notes for this episode. I just want to read one portion from it. My own attackers had many, many other victims, and a lot of those victims were also uploaded to Pornhub. When I impersonated a lawyer at age 15 as a last resort to get the videos of my assault removed, I also used my lawyer voice to get the videos of other victims of my same attackers removed. I knew what it felt like to be treated like someone else's problem, and I refused to treat the other girls that way. I wouldn't have been able to sleep at night knowing that I had successfully removed my own videos, but turned away while theirs stayed up. So I think that's the most notable thing, is that she was 15 and she had to like pretend to be a fucking lawyer to even get these websites to take off these. But
also, of course, you did,
videos.
Right? Like,
yeah.
how else, you know?
Of course.
Unless you are able to actually retain counsel and then send them a very strongly worded letter, it's not going to happen.
No, absolutely not.
At least it wasn't back then.
I think because it took a lot of these companies so long to take issues of like sexual assault videos being posted and CSAM posted on these websites, since it took them so long to take it seriously, that there was a lot of room for conservative religious groups to sort of take the reins here and drive their own narrative. And I think that's sort of why we're seeing the crackdown on speech and sexuality and like age verifications, sesta fosta, which we'll get into soon. But I think that's why we're seeing this very conservative push. And another, just before we move on to some of these like censorship laws, I think it's also just very important to note that a lot of these porn sites will profit off of the porn actors long term, and they want like the actors themselves will not get any of the revenue long term. Like it's mostly these porn websites.
Oh, you're talking about even in the case of like porn where it was shot by consenting performers and like everything was above board. Even.
Yes, yeah. A lot of these cases, like specifically under the I forget the new name, but the MindGeek umbrella sort of
ALO.
Under the ALO umbrella.
What I love is that apparently they rebranded specifically because the MindGeek brand was so fucking toxic.
Yeah, they really got. They kind of got destroyed in the 2020s. Starting in the 2020s, they really got their task taken to just over a lot of like the practices that they had on the websites.
This is reading straight from Wikipedia. In August 2023, MindGeek announced it was rebranding as ALO. The company stated that the rebranding comes in response to the need for a fresh start and a renewed commitment to innovation, diverse and inclusive adult content, and trust and safety. Well, when you say it like that, I totally trust you. I'm sure it's a great company now.
Everyone, it's all better now. This company has deprived their actors of justice and in a lot of cases even money for the work that they did. That, again, like I said before, conservative culture was able to make a move on this. And I think that's just really important to lead into this next segment.
Particularly, I think, because if you're talking about a mega corporation that has essentially monopoly power over a market, which in this case is online pornography, and has committed a whole lot of crimes, what the government needs to do is charge them with crimes and then bring antitrust proceedings against them. This is purely a question of material conditions, right?
Yeah.
The reason they're able to get away with this shit is that they have this dominant market power. The government could have the ability to fix a lot of these problems if it were to take action against them in that way. That would be far more beneficial, particularly to all of the people who have actually created this content in the first place, than creating this moral scare and moral panic about it, because then you're not really pushing in the right direction at all. You're not holding the people accountable who need to be held accountable.
Right. And like I said earlier, it's like if you don't actually address the root cause of an issue, you're just covering it up. You're not actually improving things. Right. You're sort of just pushing it down the road and not actually doing anything, because at a certain point when you have so much money, you can just like pay off. It's one of those things with like Elon Musk where it's like, oh, he broke this law. Now he has to pay $200 million. It's like, all right, that's like $1 for him. Yeah. That's straight up not anything for him.
And also, he doesn't have to pay it unless you make him.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Like that. You want to talk about like people like Elon Musk? They owe a lot of money to a lot of people. They certainly haven't paid.
Yeah. So like, how did we get here? How did we get to this fucking point? So are you familiar with those website called Backpage?
I am familiar with Backpage.
So it's no longer around. It has been taken offline, particularly in the Sesta Fosta law that was passed in 2018. This was under Donald Trump's first term. These laws were some of the first laws to start cracking away at Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. basically what this law does, Section 230, is it protects companies from being liable for things that are posted on their website. So they are not, the owners of these websites, these companies are not punished at all for, like, let's say going on Twitter and posting a death threat against someone. The company is not responsible.
Twitter itself is not legally liable for the fact that a guy posted a death threat on their platform.
Exactly. Right. And sort of that's what this law, Section 230 of the CDA, currently covers. But Sesta Fosta was sort of a chip away at Section 230 liability laws.
I also want to note that the Communications Decency Act was basically Congress's first try at regulating what was going on online, particularly with regard to questionable speech and obscene content. Because if early on it had been written in such a way where every platform was liable for every bad thing that happened on their website, it wouldn't be sustainable for all of the companies that were hosting portals. Why did I say portals like that? I sounded like Tucker Carlson. Portals. Like AOL. Right, where at that point, 1996, it basically was, AOL was the internet in 1996, you know? And
Absolutely.
So part of it, too, was that companies like AOL, CompuServe, Prodigy, whatever, they were all involved in the crafting of this legislation because they wanted to make sure that they would not be held liable for all of this stuff, because that would be very, very bad for their business.
And so with the passage of Sesta Fosta, it did create some liability for certain things, particularly illegal activities. So Backpage, like I mentioned before, was like a sex work escort website, and it was shut down due to this law. And the reason this is a problem is because this is true about abortion as well. If you sort of create a black market effect for abortion or sex work, it actually makes it a lot more dangerous for the people participating in these. Because if you make something illegal, if you make it so that doctors can't give abortions or that sex workers cannot use websites where they have full control over the clients they see, like on Backpage, that it makes it a lot more dangerous for the people engaging in this activity. Making this illegal won't make it vanish. It'll just put it out of plain sight. It'll make it more dangerous.
Well, because my understanding of the whole Backpage thing is that, you know, it wasn't just for sex work. It was it was like Craigslist, right?
Right.
But the big difference between Craigslist and Backpage was that Backpage had a subsection specifically for adult-themed advertising.
And that fell under the like illegal activity of the Sesta Fosta ruling that Trump signed. Yeah.
But like you said, having something like Backpage allowed sex workers to vet potential clients more readily than was possible otherwise, and was just an important part of the way that the industry worked overall. And this isn't to say that there was never anything bad being facilitated through Backpage, you know?
There absolutely was, yeah.
But again, this comes back to the question of what are you actually trying to do? Are you interested in, as, say, the FBI, are you interested in trying to stop human trafficking and child endangerment and stuff like that? If you are, focus on that. And in fact, I would argue that Backpage could have been, for law enforcement, a really good fucking way to do that, right?
And it actually was. So a lot of these like enforcement agencies that took a look at sex trafficking did work with sex workers a lot of the time to assist finding sex traffickers, like people engaging
setting up sting operations through Backpage, basically.
Absolutely, yeah, and like finding these people, like creating CSAM or like assaulting people. This was how it worked for the longest time, is they would work together. If you keep it regulated and work within those parameters, it's so much safer. And sex workers were at the time, before Sesta Fosta passed, sort of warning, hey, like this is going to be bad for sex trafficking. This is going to be bad, of course, for us, and also free speech online. This is just like the first step of cracking away free expression online. So, of course, Sesta Fosta passed under Trump, but it was a bipartisan movement. Since Sesta Fosta passed, we're now sort of looking down KOSA, which is the sort of follow-up to completely scrap Section 230, which is the law that I mentioned earlier.
Just also to clarify something real quick, using a lot of acronyms here.
Yeah, I am.
Sesta Fosta is the Stop Enabling Sex Traffickers Act, as well as the Allow States and Victims to Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act. And you can tell just from the way that those names are coded that they are presenting this as something that's going to, well, it's going to stop enabling sex traffickers and it's going to fight online sex trafficking. How could you be opposed to that? You know?
And the experts generally entirely disagree. It's like very obvious moral like framing here. There's a very conservative moral framing, and it's KOSA, to give the full name of that one, is the Kids Online Safety Act. It's like protect the kids.
Oh, what? You don't want kids to stay safe online?
And that's sort of the problem is like they'll say that. It's like you can't, how can you disagree with that framing? How can you disagree? Because of course you want kids to be safe, of course. But there is that ulterior motive all the time. And so ultimately, I think like this is a very clear example of taking away, like trying politicians in conjunction with like right-wing conservative groups to crack down on free speech online, which in Project 2025, it comes back into play, of course. So the person sort of behind taking down MindGeek, his name is this journalist named Nick Kristof. Are you familiar with this guy at all? It sounds like you're familiar.
Remember when he ran and tried to run for Senate and couldn't? I don't think he could even get enough signatures to get on the ballot. Do you remember that?
I do. Yeah. No, he's a flop. He's a flop.
Editing Josh here with a small correction. Kristof left the New York Times to run for governor of the state of Oregon, and they weren't willing to let him on the ballot, not because he didn't get enough signatures, but because he hadn't actually established primary residency in the state of Oregon for long enough to be eligible to run for governor.
But of course, he's a good old liberal writer, so he gets New York Times opinion section columns that people take very seriously.
Like many New York Times columnists, pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
He has such a special brain because he hears a lot of stuff about like things that are going on that are human rights violations.
Mm-hmm.
And then he thinks that makes him an expert in human rights violations, even though he himself hasn't done actual work in the field beyond writing his fucking column.
Yeah, and he sort of just like takes people's word for a lot of things.
He's very gullible. He's very gullible.
He's had a few scandals of just being told just made up bullshit, and he's written about it and caused like a panic about it. And then people are like, okay, wait, what's the source of this? And it's like, this random person. It's like, I don't really know. Actually, I don't really have a source on this.
Which I feel like, I mean, you know, we talked about Matt Iglesias, kind of a similar, I mean, he's different in terms of like what his whole deal is, but he does share with Iglesias, I think, that he has a specific ideology and a specific way of seeing the world. He filters everything through those priors, as we all do.
Of course.
But he insists that his version, Kristof does, he insists that his version of the world and his understanding of the world is the objective truth.
Absolutely. And you can, reading some of his writing, you can absolutely tell that's how he frames a lot of it. He's credited as being one of the major journalists to push for the passage of Sesta Fosta and taking down Backpage. So he's sort of been involved in like the sex trafficking world for a minute, talking about it, posting about it, and still to this day, he is still involved in this. And I think an interesting part about this, and I think why it's really important to, as I mentioned before, not sort of give too much credence about a lot of the like moral panics around like masturbation or porn, is because Nick Kristof is the perfect fucking example of a liberal being an expert in human rights abuses, but doing so, consistently propping up religious conservative groups as the people doing the good work.
Yeah, so, because he's gullible. He's getting taken for a ride.
He is, absolutely. But it's like it's one of those things where it's like it seems like he's being taken for a ride, but it's almost too much that he's doing this where it feels intentional. I do think this is somewhat intentional on his part, especially because this group that he has put to the forefront more than any other group that he's talked about in like the sex trafficking world is this group called Exodus Cry. And you're familiar with Exodus Cry too, it sounds like.
Look, June, you know I'm a certified sicko. We've been tracking Exodus Cry on the Worst of All Possible Worlds for a little while now. In fact, we did an episode of the show a few years ago about the book Every Young Man's Battle, which is there's also a tie-in documentary, such as it is, and there have been so many evangelical Christian organizations, which it should be noted also there's a lot of overlap there with the actual honest to goodness natalist sphere as well. Where so much of the fear of what is going on here does come down to these fears of like having sufficient families and making sure that Christian families remain large and durable and the standard.
Absolutely. So you would know.
Same thing with Exodus Cry, by the way. That guy compared abortion to the Holocaust. I'm sure you saw that.
Oh, absolutely. So as you know, Josh, Exodus Cry, they have also publicly stated one of the big pushes with the organization is that they have a war on porn. They have declared war on porn.
I love to. I mean, I'm just seeing here that there's a headline here from Vanity Fair from November 13, 2020 that says, Melissa McCarthy apologizes for supporting charity with anti-LGBTQ past, which is, I don't think the best headline because they still are that.
They 100% are.
They're just maybe a little more subtle about it. I'm going to go on their website real quick, actually, and see if they have shit about gay on there or not. Because sometimes they hide the ball and sometimes they don't.
I think they definitely try to, because I actually did see about the Melissa McCarthy thing. And she was like, I read this piece about this anti-sex trafficking group doing good work and I donated to them. And then I found out about all of this stuff. And it's like, that's because fucking Nick Kristof doesn't talk about the anti-gay or anti-abortion stuff. Right. He only props them up as being like a sex trafficking group.
By the way, do you want to go to their Freedom Gala? It's happening on Saturday, March 14 at the Ritz-Carlton in Dana Point, California. Where the fuck is Dana Point?
I've never heard of Dana Point.
Oh, that's Orange County. Okay.
Oh, average place for an event like this to be.
Abso-fucking-lutely. The problem, according to Exodus Cry, well, it says the problem of sex trafficking is part of a larger system of exploitation, which is true.
Absolutely.
Sex trafficking is a global threat to vulnerable women, children, and even men worldwide.
100%.
When a person has been forced, deceived, or coerced into being sold for sex, they become a victim of sex trafficking. Again, 100% true. It also talks about how people who are... Well, it's interesting that they use the word prostitution as opposed to sex work. That's an interesting tell right then and there. But talking about how like there are some people who are doing sex work of various sorts where they don't have full control over their circumstances, right?
Right.
Again, this is true. But then we get something here on their page that says something about one of the threats being porn culture. And that's the thing that makes me raise my eyebrow, because what are you talking about? Porn culture?
It's almost like they believe there's a moral degeneracy happening right now. That there is like an odd moral degeneracy with having like with like sex workers or maybe gay people or whatever it might be. It's very odd that they do seem to try to hide it. They do seem to.
Yeah, it's very different from some of the other orgs we've talked about, which are pretty upfront about what their deal is, like Focus on the Family, for instance. These guys are playing it close to the chest.
So actually, I noticed while I was doing some research for this episode, there's actually a lot of these groups that have sort of rebranded. Exodus Cry, I don't know if they've necessarily rebranded. I think they've always sort of tried to hide their underlying ideology, but there are a ton of different groups. One of them being, so there was one that was founded in the 1960s called Morality in the Media, which was an anti-porn group founded in the 1960s that is now rebranded as the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. Still the same beliefs, same actions, but they rebrand.
And I think that's such a tricky little thing that they've done there, because if you aren't paying attention, you might think that is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which is an org that has been around for a very long time that fights human trafficking. I was curious, by the way, about like how does Exodus Cry talk about this shit? And they just lie. It's lying by omission, but it's absolutely lying. It says, how does Exodus Cry serve the LGBTQ plus community? And the answer is, we believe every person should be free from sex trafficking and sexual exploitation. Exodus Cry provides assistance to all victims and survivors of the sex trade, regardless of their lifestyle, orientation, or beliefs. Members of the LGBTQ plus community are overrepresented in the sex trade, which is true, actually. You know,
Absolutely.
And since 2010, we have offered services to this population to help them exit a life of exploitation and find healing. Now, again, it's like, what do you mean? What do you mean by that?
A lot of
What do you mean by
conservatives
that?
still believe in conversion therapy.
Yep.
That's still sort of a big belief, as we saw earlier. Fucking Milo Yiannopoulos in that same Tucker Carlson interview was talking about how much he thinks they need to bring back conversion therapy for gay people and trans people.
And then after that, does Exodus Cry actively lobby for or against reproductive rights? Answer being, Exodus Cry is an organization that since its inception has never advocated, campaigned, or focused on any other issue besides sex trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation, which again is technically true.
Right.
That's technically true.
They've technically
Exodus
not-
Cry
yeah.
as an organization does not lobby on behalf of like anti-abortion shit.
But a lot of the leaders of this organization historically have come from very evangelical Christian backgrounds that absolutely are anti-abortion.
And as we have talked about on the show numerous times, the way that this world works is that you have a lot of different interconnected organizations that are all fighting for the same cause using different tactics.
Absolutely. I think a way to sort of show just exactly how Exodus Cry absolutely does engage in this tactic is that they've had a long partnership with this group that I swear to God, I don't know if you've ever heard of this before. It's called the International House of Prayer, Kansas City. So
I know International House of Prayer.
IHOP KC, ridiculous name.
Evangelical church in Kansas City that their big famous thing is that they never stop praying.
Right. It's like a 24/7, like you can find it on YouTube. It's like on fucking YouTube or whatever. And it's a constant stream.
And if you're in the area, you can go in, you can pray at the International House of Prayer. And yeah, a very traditionalist evangelical Protestant church with all of the attendant biases, prejudices, and opinions.
Yeah, the pastor Micah Bickle of this organization has once stated that, this is a direct quote from him, God has called conservative Christians to exercise dominion over society by taking control of political and cultural institutions. And that is 100% obviously the playbook that is being done with Exodus Cry. A lot of these different groups that are sort of taking on maybe Pornhub and sort of like actually taking the reins on some of these sex trafficking issues, but then underlying having those very conservative cultural beliefs.
Yeah, my favorite thing about Mike Bickle,
Yeah, tell me.
he's been credibly accused of child sexual abuse.
Many such cases of a lot of these like very moral individuals, moral air quotes, all like being involved in a lot of really bad shit. I mean, there's so many people close to the Trump world, of course, like Matt Gaetz and all these people.
Yeah, somebody came forward in February 2024 and was like, yeah, when I was 14...
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
When I was 14, he abused me. And then there was an investigation, and this was reported in the Kansas City Star, which is the paper of record for Kansas City. And that investigation found that he abused 17 women. I don't know how many of them were underage at the time. But
These are the
yeah,
fucking
right?
groups that talk about degeneracy and like, oh, we need to like have the moral. We need to ban porn. This is a war on porn. We have to do this, this, and that because it's immoral. But here are the fucking representatives saying this shit.
This is what gets me so fucking rip-roaringly angry, right? Every accusation is a confession for these motherfuckers.
It always is.
And I'm not saying that, you know, every single one of them is necessarily this way, but to me, it feels like a way of compensating for a guilty conscience as opposed to an honest to goodness desire to make the world a better place. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, look at people like Russell Brand. He gets outed for sexually harassing a lot of people. And then all of a sudden he turns to religion and he starts talking about, oh, I am reborn with God. And like, cause that's...
Yeah, because in religious circles, they don't have external legal accountability.
Right.
As long as you like do the fucking song and dance and keep it within the church, they will continue to cover for you up until the point that invariably things become so undeniably bad that the law intervenes.
Absolutely. There is a huge concerted effort for people to launder the public opinion and sort of like do like a charades so people don't really see what's going on in a lot of these groups, of these like very religious extremist groups.
And people like Nick Kristof are useful idiots for people like that because they can, as you said, launder it through their more liberal reputation to a more liberal audience.
Absolutely. And we've seen that done with like trans topics, like Jesse Singal. He was like one of the, he's the Nick Kristof for like trans issues. There is always that like good liberal, air quote, good liberal, that's always just asking questions about specific topics that always give a lot of credence to these different groups.
And I think that's because when it comes to the way that liberals versus conservatives receive information, in order to be persuasive, the way that the information is presented needs to fit ideological priors. So in the case of conservatives, particularly Christian conservatives, the emphasis is going to be on traditional values. It's going to be on the way that things sort of fit into the society that is ordered along the lines that they understand. Mm-hmm. It's going to emphasize law and order. And it's going to be like, this is a problem that exists because we are insufficiently strict toward these problems from a law enforcement perspective, right?
Absolutely.
But that's not going to play for liberals because liberals think of themselves, I think, broadly as, well, we care about everybody's rights. Mm-hmm. And we want to protect their rights because at the end of the day, the state is the thing that both guarantees our rights and enforces them. Mm-hmm. Whereas conservatives, I think, tend to see the state as being a strictly oppressive thing. Therefore, we need to come up with reasons that we need to protect these people by deputizing the state. Mm-hmm. So it's protection as opposed to punishment.
I completely agree with that. Speaking of punishment now, there are a lot of laws. None of them have been passed yet. But there are a lot of laws right now circulating in the United States that are trying to completely revoke Section 230, which, as stated before, would put a lot of liability on pretty much any social media website. The intention here, through specifically the one that is most likely to pass, KOSA, the Kids Online Safety Act, it's probably going to pass because, as I stated before, it's a bipartisan effort.
And KOSA already passed the Senate. It just hasn't passed the House yet.
But it very likely will, and will very likely be signed by Donald Trump. And sort of the through line I want to make here, the thing that is heavily concerning is, as we saw before, there has been a lot of laundering efforts for a lot of these hyper-conservative groups to sort of take control of these narratives and rule via their morality, their sort of religious conservative morality. And if you put all of the liability on what's posted on these websites up to companies, like if you have to punish the companies that own these social media websites.
Well, you'd have to take X.com, the everything app, offline immediately for one thing.
Which would be good.
That'd be a silver lining.
I mean, that would be a silver lining. But then, of course, like there is that silver lining of like, oh my God, wait, a world without Twitter would be so fucking beautiful. But then there's the concern of like, okay, so what if a far right conservative religious group takes control and all of a sudden they're like, oh, we cannot allow people talking about being gay online because that's immoral. But that's not keeping kids safe. And as we know, a lot of people in the natalist movement right now, this far right movement, consider being trans pornographic. So if you start to crack down, like that is some language directly from Project 2025, is that they want to sort of legally deem being trans pornographic. That is how a lot of these people think that. So if porn is not allowed to be online without adding age verification IDs, that is restricting speech to an insane degree. That is really fucking bad if we're ruling via morality, because that's what a lot of this is going to come down to at this point. It'll be access to the internet and social media via morality, not actually on protecting people. That's not what this does. It does not protect people.
Also, motherfucker. Sorry, I'm doing some research here.
Yeah, what are you looking at?
Because I want to. I'm. What I've been doing as we've been going through this is I've also been like, okay, in terms of some of the people who we've covered, who are on the natalist side of things, what have they been saying? And I've got a little quote here that I'm going to read to you, and then I'm going to tell you who said it. The Kids Online Safety Act gives parents and young Americans effective tools to make their own experiences on these platforms more age-appropriate, granting them the freedom to disable the most addictive features. It also imposes upon these big tech companies what they should have taken up themselves long ago, a duty of care to not design their platforms to exploit children. It is time to pass the Kids Online Safety Act. Social media companies do not need or deserve the protection of lawmakers. America's children do. This is a quote from Michael Toscano, who is the executive director of the Institute for Family Studies.
Oh my, it's always them. It's always them, man.
But also to the point of the Institute for Family Studies, how we were talking about the way that there are a lot of organizations that exist out there to create data and research and things like that, that are based on honest to goodness real world statistics, but are deployed to advance a conservative agenda in a way that is palatable to liberals. That's the point of the fucking Institute for Family Studies, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, Lyman Stone wouldn't be fucking working there.
Literally 100%. And that's sort of like the part where it's like, social media is exploiting children in a lot of ways. It is bad. As a lot of it can be very bad for children. That is absolutely true. But it is just that danger, that danger of like, also, oh my God, a lot of these fucking groups are also, they're licking their chops at this. They are very excited to have you upload your ID to go onto any website where you can maybe see a semblance of discussion about being gay.
Enough is enough. The default for children online should be safety, not exploitation. The Kids Online Safety Act empowers parents through recourse, transparency, and the stringent technical controls needed to hold big tech accountable for deliberately targeting younger and younger users with products that rewire their brains, poison their consciences, and generally impair their life satisfaction, said Kara Frederick, director of the Tech Policy Center at the Heritage Foundation.
Come on, man. Yeah, that's the thing is there's probably endless different statements you can get from every single one of these organizations that we've ever talked about on this show that all essentially say the same thing. But some of the language specifically that I just want to reiterate from Project 2025, the actual large written manifesto that the current Trump administration is basically ruling from.
Written in part by the Heritage Foundation, by the way. We got to throw that out there.
Very important detail is that, so this is a portion from it. Manifested today in the omnipresent propagation of transgender ideology and sexualization of children. They are tying those two together. They tie those two together. They consider transgender, of course, exploiting children, but also pornographic. So this is, I don't know how much more clear I think we could make this at this point. That is what the intention behind the long term. At first, maybe not, but long-term intention. They will, just as they just started talking about, trans issues in sports, then becomes trans issues in universities, and then becomes trans issues in it'll keep going. It will never stop. Just because they get one achievement, it will not stop.
Well, and I think what frustrates me about a lot of this too is that the idea of actually trying to protect children is extremely fucking important. And I think that in the context of this conversation here, when we're talking about who do they need to be protected from, the answer is the corporations that seek to monetize their attention.
Absolutely.
That is, in my estimation, the biggest threat. And what this narrative, I think, creates is this idea of, and it's something that we've heard for a very, very long time, it's that, there's these scary guys out there who are going to snatch up your kids or whatever. It's very notable, I think, that the statements that I read just now from conservative organizations, right, were from the website of Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal.
No, he put up the Heritage Foundation's quote?
Yes, because these are quotes that are designed to make the average sensible liberal be like, And
it works. It
sad
to say, it fucking works. A lot of Democrats, like I said, this is a very bipartisan effort. A lot of Democrats are on board with this.
But the problem is that the issue isn't really with children being on these platforms per se. It's with these platforms and the way that they are designed. And the United States government could act in a way that would utilize its regulatory power to change the way these platforms work, but they won't because they are captured by those industries.
Yeah, no, there is so much capital to be made by not outlawing, like, again, example that I mentioned earlier in this episode is Grok generating essentially porn of real people if you just ask it to. The UK, I believe just earlier today, threatened to just straight up ban X to take on Elon Musk if he doesn't get rid of this as like a feature, if they don't start to take this seriously. And that's like, that does way more than KOSA could possibly ever do, is to like threaten the revenue stream of these platforms.
Exactly.
Yeah, because that's what it's all about.
I've seen the UK media refer to that situation as a row, and I'm like, this seems a little more intense than a row to me. Usually when it's a row, it's like somebody in the fucking House of Commons said something that was a little rude, and then somebody else is like, hey, don't say that. And that's a row.
I'll never understand the British. I like that you sort of know a lot. Like as an American, you know a lot of the culture and you know a lot about these people. You can translate I've never heard of a fucking row before. That's brand new to me.
It's spelled ROW. So if you read it, you'll think it says row, but it's pronounced row.
You're doing important work here. I just hope you know this.
I try to be like the Anglo to America cultural translator and vice versa.
There's not many, and
I spent so much fucking time over there at this point that like, you know, I think I know Brits pretty well.
I think you do. Yeah. So obviously America is not going to actually try to hold a lot of these companies accountable. They are not actually going to try to harm the revenue streams. But what will they do? So KOSA, if this passes, which it probably will, what'll happen is you will have to submit your ID to verify your age. Maybe on the surface, that doesn't sound so bad, right? Like, okay, sure, I'll just like take a fucking picture of my ID, upload it to a website, it'll like I can get back on Facebook or whatever. Doesn't sound so bad, but...
And this is something you already have to do in Britain, by the way. To the point of the UK.
Yeah, UK does this. Australia does this. I believe Australia also. So this isn't just a US problem. This is sort of a growing problem across the world. So I think Josh, you and I probably both agree that just having you upload your ID to a website to verify age doesn't really fucking solve anything. I think that's sort of the theme with this whole episode is the solutions being offered right now doesn't really fucking address the problems, because if you have these age ID verifications, okay, you can still go fucking ask Grok to generate fucking horrible images that should not be generated. It doesn't actually solve anything. It just prevents people from getting on these platforms.
I mean, if you were serious, if you were really, truly serious about making sure that minors could not access adult content online, the only way I think that you could really do that would be to build an entirely separate internet.
Yeah, sort of like how YouTube has like YouTube Kids or whatever, or like I think Instagram now also has like a similar sort of thing like that, where it's like,
well, sort of, but like again, those are elective options that are created by these companies. I mean, very literally, like you would have to create a separate internet for minors. Fully different set of websites, fully different set of everything. And you would have to build it in such a way where there were extremely strict regulations about like who could do what and how. And yeah, you would have to build it from the ground up. That's not going to happen.
No,
and I'm not even saying that that's a good solution. I'm just saying, like, if you were serious about accomplishing the goals that they have laid out, that's what you would need to do.
Yeah, no, I agree. Probably will not happen. That's not something they would ever take seriously as a solution, because that would be... Congress doesn't do anything. How will we even ever get close to like a solution like that? So I think the main concern, especially with like uploading IDs to different websites, big concern is like we already have so many instances all the fucking time. Data leaks happen all the fucking time. That's never going to change, never going to go away. But like now, what if a data leak happens? You upload your ID to, let's say, Facebook, and there's a Facebook data leak. All of a sudden, whoever hacked it, data brokers, maybe advertisers, have all of your fucking info with your fucking face.
Right.
All of this stuff will immediately leak. There have already been reports of personal ID data hacks that have occurred in this world already. So like we know this is going to happen. They will never not happen. That's a goldmine for advertising companies, even individual malicious actors that harvest data. It's going to lead to like some of the largest data leaks and like identity thefts I think we've probably ever seen historically, once everyone's IDs are uploaded online.
I disagree. I think it's really chill if there's just a guy in Belarus who has a photo of my passport. I think that's awesome, actually, and I don't know why you'd have a problem with it.
Probably really good for you. Maybe he'll sign you up for like Kalshi and maybe make you some money.
Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows? Maybe there could be some benefits here. And wouldn't you fucking know it? Josh, would you be surprised if I told you that a lot of these, like KOSA in particular, and some of these proposed laws don't have any protections for potential like stolen IDs or data
No, of course
being
it wouldn't
stolen?
fucking surprise
of course
me.
not. Yeah.
No.
A lot of these like modern tech companies sort of thrive off of this happening, this like data being harvested.
That's so fucking funny though, to propose like a mandatory national ID check and then not put in any sort of liability whatsoever if they fuck up as part of that process.
Yeah, of course, it will never fall down on these companies.
It's not going to happen. That's the thing. It's chill. It's not going to happen.
Just don't think about it too hard.
Yeah.
It's a complicated topic because I think like the internet fucking sucks now, right? Like this is, I feel like, the worst iteration of the internet that I've ever used. And like, would I be that upset if some of it changed, some of it got censored? I mean, I think some of it could possibly maybe be good. I don't know. It's still such it's such an evolving issue still, but I feel like just the fact that there will be no true sense of anonymity ever again on the internet, that's sort of like an odd thing that I don't know. How do you feel about that? I feel so complicated about that.
I think it's bad. I think that anonymity is actually really important. And I think that something happened when Facebook originally got started up and allowed you to use your real name. Because at that time, it was like, well, why would I use my real name online? That's insane.
Yeah. It's like, why everyone has insane email names.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm interested too in the question of how this fits into the natalist project as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm somebody who wants everybody to have a dozen babies, how does having a more heavily censored internet accomplish that goal? And to me, what it comes down to is, as we have talked about in other episodes, this idea of certain things being allowable and other things not being allowable, and anything outside of what is considered allowable morally being inherently criminal.
Mm-hmm.
And as you point out, you know, this includes being a gender minority, a sexual minority, whatever. What this really does is it gives the government the ability to criminalize expression. Any version of this country that wasn't fucking insane would be like, hey, what about the First Amendment? But it all can be easily trampled underfoot for some reason when the concept of children is invoked.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what I get hung up on a little bit, right? Because in the time that we've spent talking about natalism so far, they're always able to hold up the concept of children as a trump card.
Yeah.
And at first it sounds like they're acknowledging the fact that if you're a kid, particularly an adolescent, your mind is developing. But if we are heading toward the world, just sort of linking to what we talked about in our episode about childhood, right? If we are moving toward a world where you're able to like start working like almost a full-time job when you turn 14, if sexual age of consent laws are lowered to around that age, but you're not able to even get on the fucking real internet until you're 18, what kind of a world is that?
I feel like it's so obviously like a world that is trying to be created right now. It's like you were asking at the top of what you just said about like, how does this fit into like the natalist agenda exactly? And it's like I think it does, because it's like a lot of people find a lot of expression dangerous to like a right-wing cause, like like as we were talking about before, like it's like there's a lot of conservatives view so much of what they want to censor online, what they want to no longer see as a moral degeneracy, like they take people being able to be freely and openly transgender and talk about that and like have that be discovered as like a thing that someone could be. They take that as like a threat. The way they view being trans and gay, the reason it's such a threat to them is because they do view like a family as like it's a man and a woman having 6 to 10 kids, and like in their worldview, like gay people can't do that because there's like no procreation between a man and a man or a woman and a woman in the traditionalist like religious godly way that they intend. And maybe that could be true for trans people as well, and they find that as a threat. They find that as like a moral decay. They think that's a moral decay, especially as it's framed going against like traditional family, which they prioritize so heavily, Right.
But at the same time, I'm like, but how does sending your child down into the mines when they're 15 help? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, and I mean that very genuinely. I mean, I do know
That's the weird thing.
I know what the point is. The point is that they want to be able to use the bodies of children for capital accumulation. Like, that's the reason. But I don't understand the way that you turn this into a cohesive moral ethic. I don't think you can. It's so fucking bankrupt, you know?
I totally agree. And I think the thing that we don't often say is I think they are just sort of lying a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's just that they don't care if it's consistent, you know? There doesn't need to be consistency. It's more about like their political project, and not even just a political project, but attaining political and social and cultural power, because what comes with that, more money, more social sway, more actual individual power. And I think it's mostly about that, because they can conveniently use, as you said, it was a trump card. Like invoking the kids, protecting the kids is a trump card. It beats out any argument, because it's like, oh, we can't have trans 14-year-olds participate in sports because it endangers the kids. And it's like, no. It's they don't actually mean it when they evoke these things. They know that they don't mean it. They do know that they are intentionally lying.
And I think another piece of it too is pulling it back to sort of what we were talking about toward the beginning of the episode with this anti-masturbation panic or whatever. Part of the reason that being able to block access to any and all content that could ever be considered erotic for minors is that it then allows you, at least potentially, to capture their imagination where other things are not possible beyond procreation. You can actually roll the clock back and return with a V to a world where there are men and there are women, and the purpose of women in the purpose of sexual congress for women is to conceive and procreate
and have that massive family
and never want anything else.
Yeah. I mean, and then like just look at the way that the current Trump administration talks about like the family. They often invoke pro-nuclear family propaganda. They invoke the traditionally dressed woman with the two kids and the husband it gets out of their fancy car and comes back home from work to the house that's being taken care of from the woman. It's a very
and they're all shitty AI generated videos and photos depicting that shit. Yeah.
And they all have 6 fingers. Yeah.
Right.
But like it's a very traditional gender anti-feminist project. Absolutely. I think the biggest takeaway, though, about all of this is, of course, not that porn is a moral decay, but I think what really is the true moral decay here is that the water has gotten muddied so much because these corporations are taking advantage of children and us, you and I, Josh, the listeners. Like, a lot of these corporations are contributing to so much moral decay, but that's not the type of moral decay that Congress or any of these fucking people want to take on, because that provides money. That's where the money is. Algorithms are money to a lot of these companies, and there's so much money in a lot of this corporate manipulation of people.
Thank God that my child will never be able to see anything erotic online and will only watch AI-generated videos of different colored horses going into and out of a fountain set to AI-generated music as God intended.
And, you know, kids can go on Roblox. They can gamble. There's gambling mechanics and all of this stuff now. There will be gambling mechanics. You will be out of the womb, fresh out of the womb. You will have to download DraftKings.
I want my children to be gambling my money, not their money, my money in Roblox. Once again, as God intended.
A very godly activity is to get a gambling addiction very young. Yeah.
Hell yeah. All right. I think we've solved it.
I think so. The true moral decay. Capitalism.
We love you all, babies. Every single sweet baby out there. Remember, you are loved. And we'll see you next week.
See ya.